The golden ship from Earth landed on the crystal platform of the Valori Palace just as the three suns began to set. Queen Silutha Valkyran watched from her balcony, her forearms crossed over her chest, her silver scales catching the dying light. She felt nothing but cold anger in her heart. This was the day she had dreaded for 6 long months. The day her human husband would arrive. The Valori were an ancient species. They had sailed between stars when humans were still living in caves. Their bodies stood 8 feet tall, covered in beautiful scales that changed color with their moods. They lived for thousands of years. They had 4 arms and eyes that could see in complete darkness. To them, humans were like insects, small, weak, gone in the blink of an eye. But the Galactic Concordat had demanded this marriage. The border wars had killed millions on both sides. The only way to stop the fighting was to join the two species through blood. And so the queen of the most powerful empire in the galaxy had to marry a human. The ship's door opened. A man walked out. Marcus Cole was 34 years old. He had dark hair cut short in military style and eyes the color of a stormy sky. He wore the dress uniform of Earth's United Colonies, medals shining on his chest. He had been a commander in their fleet, a soldier who had fought in many battles. But to Silutha, he looked like a child. She did not go down to greet him. She sent her servants instead. They brought him to a small room in the servants' wing, far from the royal chambers. His bags were placed on a simple bed. No guards stood at his door. No flags of Earth hung on his walls. He was the queen's husband in name only. The first dinner was a disaster. The great hall was filled with 100 noble families, all dressed in their finest robes. They spoke in High Valori, a language so complex that it took 50 years to learn properly. Marcus sat at the far end of the table, trying to follow the conversation, understanding nothing. The nobles laughed behind their hands. Some pointed at him openly. "Look at him," whispered Lady Voreth, loud enough for many to hear. "He cannot even hold his eating tools correctly. His fingers are so clumsy. I hear humans only live for 80 years, said another noble. "By the time he learns our customs, he will be dead." More laughter. Marcus kept his eyes on his food. His face showed nothing. Silutha watched him from her throne at the head of the table. She waited for him to lose his temper. She waited for him to demand respect, to make a scene that would embarrass Earth and break the treaty. Then she could send him away and be done with this foolish arrangement. But Marcus simply finished his meal, stood up, bowed to the queen in the human fashion, and left quietly. Silutha felt her scales flush purple with confusion. Where was his pride? Where was his anger? Any Valori male would have challenged at least 3 nobles to combat by now. The days turned into weeks. Marcus settled into a routine. He woke before dawn, when the palace was still dark and quiet. He exercised alone in the lower courtyards, where no one would see him. He ran until his lungs burned. He trained with weights until his muscles screamed. He practiced fighting techniques from his military days. Then he would shower, dress in simple clothes, and spend his morning in the palace library. The library was vast, filled with millions of books and data crystals. Most of it was in Valori script, which Marcus could not read, but there were translation devices, slow and clumsy, and he used them for hours every day. He read about Valori history. He read about their wars, their heroes, their failures. He read their military strategies and battle tactics. He read about their culture, their religion, their art. The librarians watched him with curiosity. No one had ever seen a human work so hard. Silutha heard about this from her spies, but she dismissed it. "He is trying to impress me," she told her advisors. "It will not work. A human cannot understand our ways in one lifetime, let alone a few months." At official events, she kept him at a distance. She never introduced him as her husband. She never called him by name. When foreign diplomats asked about him, she would wave her hand and say, "The human is well," as if he were a pet rather than a person. Marcus accepted all of this without complaint. One night, 3 months after his arrival, Silutha found herself unable to sleep. She walked through the palace gardens, trying to clear her mind. The moonlight made the crystal flowers glow with soft blue light. She heard a sound and stopped. Someone was in the training yard. Moving quietly, she looked around a corner. There was Marcus, alone in the darkness, practicing with a wooden sword. His movements were strange to her eyes, different from Valori combat styles. He was fast for a human. Very fast. He moved like water, flowing from one position to another without pause. He trained for 2 hours without stopping. His body was covered in sweat. His breathing was hard and rough, but he did not rest. He did not slow down. When he finally stopped, he stood still for a long moment, looking up at the stars. Then he spoke, not knowing anyone was listening. "I will earn my place here. I will prove that humans are not weak, no matter how long it takes, no matter what they do to me." Salutha slipped away before he could see her. The next morning, she sat on her throne and watched the human enter for the daily court session. He stood in the back, as always, ignored by everyone. But now she noticed things she had not seen before. The way he observed everything. The way his eyes moved from person to person, reading their body language, studying their relationships. The way he remembered every name, every face, every detail. He was not sulking in silence. He was learning. For the first time, Salutha Valkyran felt something other than contempt for her human husband. She felt the smallest seed of curiosity, but she crushed it quickly. He was still just a human, still just a political necessity, still nothing more than a treaty on legs. She turned her attention back to the matters of her empire and forgot about him once again. She did not know that in 6 months, he would save her life. And in 1 year, he would change the galaxy forever. The Dominion of Keth had been enemies of the Valori for 10,000 years. Their species was even older, even more powerful. They had 6 eyes that saw in every direction at once. Their skin was black as the void between stars. They believed they were the chosen rulers of the galaxy, and they hated anyone who stood against them. When they heard about the marriage between the Valori queen and a human, they saw opportunity. Lord Vethrak arrived at the palace on a cold morning. His diplomatic ship was shaped like a blade, dark and dangerous. He walked through the crystal halls with his guards behind him, his 6 eyes scanning everything, missing nothing. The official reason for his visit was trade negotiations. The real reason was to find weakness. The welcome dinner was tense. Vethrak sat across from Salutha, speaking in smooth tones about peace and cooperation. His words were honey, but his eyes were poison. Marcus sat in his usual place at the far end of the table. He watched the Dominion ambassador carefully. Something about the alien made his soldier instincts wake up. This was not a diplomat. This was a predator. After the dinner, Vethrak found Marcus alone on one of the palace balconies. The human was looking out at the city below, where millions of Valori lived their lives. "You must be the queen's human pet," Vethrak said in perfect English. His voice was like silk wrapped around broken glass. Marcus turned slowly. "Ambassador, I did not expect you to speak my language. I speak 47 languages. Humans are interesting creatures. So small, yet so ambitious." Vethrak moved closer. "Tell me, how does it feel to be married to the most powerful female in this sector and be treated like a servant?" "I do not know what you mean." "Oh, come now." Vethrak's mouth twisted into something like a smile. "The whole galaxy knows. She barely looks at you. She keeps you hidden away like a shameful secret. Your own wife cannot stand the sight of you." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. "And yet here you are, Lord Vethrak, the great ambassador of the mighty Dominion, standing in the dark, talking to a pet. What does that say about you?" Something flickered in Vethrak's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or something darker. "You have a sharp tongue for a small creature. I have a sharp many things." The 2 males stared at each other. The air between them seemed to crackle with invisible energy. Then Vethrak laughed, a cold sound that had no warmth in it. "Interesting. Very interesting. Perhaps humans are not as boring as I thought." He walked away without another word. But Marcus noticed how his guards glanced back, studying him, marking him. The Dominion was planning something. Marcus was sure of it. Over the next few weeks, he began attending the military briefings. No one had invited him. No one wanted him there, but there was no rule against it. And he sat quietly in the back, listening to everything. The news was not good. Dominion warships were gathering at the border. Small attacks were happening on Valori outposts. Nothing big enough to start a war, but enough to test their defenses. The Queen's generals argued about what to do. Admiral Korath, the highest military commander, insisted they should wait. "Our fleet is not ready for a full war. We need time to build more ships." Others disagreed. "If we wait, They will only grow stronger. We should strike first. Salutha listened to both sides but made no decision. The burden of choice weighed heavy on her shoulders. One evening, a report arrived on her desk. It was a tactical analysis of the Dominion fleet movements, complete with predictions of their most likely attack strategies. It suggested 3 possible responses, each one detailed and practical. She did not recognize the writing style. "Who sent this?" she asked her secretary. "The human, Your Majesty. Commander Cole." Salutha almost threw it away. What could a human know about Vailori military strategy? But something made her read it anyway. By the 3rd page, she was sitting up straight. By the 5th page, she had called for her spy master. "This analysis," she said, pointing at the report. "Is it accurate?" The spy master, an old female named Thesara, studied the document for a long time. Her 4 eyes widened as she read. "Your Majesty, this is remarkable. He has identified patterns in Dominion behavior that our own analysts missed. His predictions match our classified intelligence almost perfectly. How did he know these things? He sits in the military briefings, but we only discuss general matters there. This level of detail would require..." Thesara stopped, her scales turning pale blue with shock. He figured it out. From fragments of information and public records, he reconstructed our secret intelligence. That should not be possible. Salutha looked at the report again. The handwriting was neat and careful, each letter formed with precision. Marcus had written it himself, spending hours to make sure she could read it. "What do you think of his suggestions?" she asked. "They are unconventional. Our generals would never consider them." Thesara paused. "But they might work. They might work very well." That night, Salutha walked to the servants' wing for the first time since Marcus had arrived. She stood outside his door, raising her hand to knock. Then she stopped. What would she say? That she was sorry for how she had treated him? That she had been wrong about him? No. She was the queen. Queens did not apologize to anyone, especially not to humans. She let her hand fall and walked away, but she could not stop thinking about him. The pet who understood her empire better than her own generals. The weak human who trained alone in the darkness while others slept. The treaty husband who endured every insult with quiet dignity. Who was Marcus Cole? Really? She was beginning to realize that she had never truly tried to find out, and by the time she did, it would almost be too late. The attack came on the night of the Harvest Moon Festival. Every Vailori in the Empire celebrated this ancient holiday. The palace was full of music and dancing. Thousands of nobles filled the great halls, dressed in their finest robes, their scales painted with golden patterns. Salutha sat on her throne, watching her people enjoy themselves. For one night, she could forget about the Dominion threat. For one night, she could simply be a queen at peace. Marcus stood near the back wall, as always. He wore a simple dark suit that made him almost invisible among the colorful Vailori. His eyes moved constantly, watching the doors, watching the guards, watching everything. Something felt wrong. He could not explain it. The guards seemed nervous. Some of them kept checking their communication devices. And he noticed that Admiral Korath was missing from the celebration. Korath never missed official events. He was too ambitious for that. At midnight, the lights went out. For a moment, there was confused silence. Then the screaming started. Flashes of plasma fire lit up the darkness. Dominion shock troops appeared from nowhere, their black armor making them almost invisible. They cut through the crowd with brutal efficiency, killing anyone who fought back. Marcus moved without thinking. His body remembered his training even when his mind was still catching up. He grabbed a fallen guard's weapon and fired 3 shots. 3 Dominion soldiers fell, but there were too many of them. Hundreds of black-armored troops poured into the hall. He saw Salutha fighting her way toward the door. Her 4 arms moved in a blur, wielding an ancient blade that had belonged to her ancestors. She was magnificent in combat, her scales flashing red with battle fury. A group of loyal guards surrounded her. Together, they fought through the chaos and escaped into the corridor. Marcus followed at a distance, watching their backs, taking down any enemy who got too close. The small group made it to the throne room. It was the most secure location in the palace, with thick walls and heavy doors. If they could hold out there, help might arrive in time. But when they burst through the doors, they found they were not alone. Admiral Korath stood in the center of the room. Behind him were 50 Dominion soldiers, weapons raised and ready. The Admiral's scales had turned the color of old blood, a sign of deep shame in Valori culture. "Admiral," Salutha said, her voice cold as winter. "What is the meaning of this?" "The meaning is simple, Your Majesty." Korath's voice was steady, but his four hands trembled slightly. "The Empire needs new leadership. Strong leadership, not a queen who weakens us by marrying humans. You dare to betray me. You, whom I trusted with my fleets. I dare because I must. The Dominion has promised to spare our people if you step down. This is the only way to avoid total war." Salutha laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "You fool. The Dominion does not keep promises. They will destroy us either way. Perhaps, but at least we will have a chance." Korath raised his hand. "Surrender now, and I will make sure your death is quick." There were only 12 loyal guards left. They were wounded and exhausted. Against 50 fresh Dominion soldiers, they had no chance. Salutha raised her blade. "A Valori queen does not surrender. I will die fighting." Marcus had been watching from the shadows near the door. No one was paying attention to him. He was just a human, after all, not worth noticing. He took a deep breath and found the control panel on the wall. The lights went out again. What happened next became legend throughout the galaxy. Marcus moved through the darkness like death itself. He had trained for years in night combat. His human eyes adjusted faster than the Valori, and much faster than the Dominion soldiers, whose 6 eyes were designed for dim conditions but not total blackness. He took the first soldier from behind, snapping his neck with a technique he had learned in Earth's special forces. He grabbed the alien's rifle and fired twice, killing 2 more before they could react. Then chaos erupted. The Dominion soldiers fired wildly, their shots lighting up the room in brief flashes. In those flashes, they saw glimpses of something impossible, a small figure moving between them, too fast to track, killing with terrible precision. Marcus fought like nothing they had ever seen. He used their own size against them, staying low where their weapons could not easily aim. He moved constantly, never in the same place twice. When he ran out of ammunition, he fought with his hands, with their own blades, with anything he could grab. Salutha watched in shock. Her eyes could see better in darkness than a human's, and what she saw made her scales turn white with amazement. Her husband was a warrior, not just a soldier who could follow orders, but a true warrior, born for battle. He moved with a grace that seemed almost supernatural. Every motion was perfect, efficient, deadly. The fight lasted less than 5 minutes. When the emergency lights finally flickered on, Marcus stood alone in the center of the room. His clothes were torn and soaked with blood, both his own and that of his enemies. He was breathing hard, swaying on his feet. Around him lay 43 Dominion shock troops, dead, every single one. Admiral Korath stared at the human with wide eyes. His scales had turned pure white with terror. "That is impossible," he whispered. "You are just a human." Marcus looked at him. His gray eyes held no mercy, no warmth, only cold judgment. "Yes," he said. "I am." He raised his weapon. Korath screamed and ran, crashing through a window and disappearing into the night. Marcus tried to follow, but his body finally gave out. He collapsed to his knees, the rifle falling from his fingers. Salutha rushed to him. She caught him before he could fall completely, her 4 arms wrapping around his broken body. "Marcus," she said. It was the first time she had ever used his name. "Hold on. The medics are coming." He looked up at her face. Even through the pain, he managed a small smile. "Did I earn my place yet?" Salutha felt tears forming in her eyes. Valori rarely cried. She had not cried in 500 years. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, you did." But the fight was not over. Korath had escaped, and with him, the secrets of the palace defenses. The Dominion fleet was still out there, waiting, and Marcus Cole was not done yet. The war room was silent except for the soft beeping of tactical displays. Red lights covered the holographic map like drops of blood. Each light represented a Dominion warship. There were 300 of them. Salutha stood before the display, her scales dark gray with despair. Her 50 remaining ships formed a thin line between the enemy fleet and her homeworld. Reinforcements were 5 days away. The planetary shields would fall in 12 hours. The math was simple. Her people were going to die. "Your Majesty." General Thesara stepped forward. her old face showing the weight of centuries. "We have no options left. We should evacuate the civilian population to the underground shelters. It will not save everyone, but some might survive." "Some?" Salutha closed her eyes. "I am supposed to protect them all. That is what it means to be queen. You cannot protect them from impossible odds." "No one could." The door opened. Marcus walked in slowly, his body wrapped in bandages from his wounds. The medics had told him to stay in bed for at least a week. He had ignored them. Every officer in the room turned to look at him. The story of what he had done in the throne room had spread through the palace like fire. They no longer saw a weak human. They saw something else entirely. "Commander Cole," Salutha said, "you should be resting." "I will rest when this is over." He walked to the tactical display and studied it carefully. The flagship, the Eternal Judgment. Vethrak is on it. So is Korath. We know, but we cannot touch it. Their point defense systems would destroy any ship we sent. I am not talking about a ship. The room went quiet. The Dominion uses a neural-linked command system. Marcus continued. All their ships are connected to the flagship through a central network. The admirals think with one mind. It makes them fast and coordinated. Yes, we know this. It is one of their greatest strengths. It is also their greatest weakness. Marcus touched the hologram, zooming in on the flagship. If we destroy the command bridge, the network collapses. Their fleet will fall into chaos. They will not be able to coordinate their attacks. General Thesara shook her head. A surgical strike is impossible. We already discussed this. They would see our ships coming from 1,000,000 kilometers away. Not a strike, Marcus said. A walk, one person, through their maintenance systems. He pulled up a new display. It showed the internal structure of a Dominion flagship, stolen from intelligence files. Their ships are huge. Miles of corridors and tunnels that regular crew never use. Maintenance passages, ventilation shafts, waste disposal systems. A single person could move through them without being detected. How would this person get on board? Thesara asked. Drop pod. Small enough to avoid their sensors if we time it right. They are focused on our fleet, not on tiny objects in space. Salutha felt her hearts begin to beat faster. Even if someone got on board, they would have to fight through hundreds of guards to reach the bridge. Thousands, probably. By the time I get close, they will know I am there. The room went completely silent. Everyone understood what he was saying. Marcus. Salutha stepped toward him, her voice barely a whisper. This is a suicide mission. Yes. You would die. Probably. Why? Her voice cracked. Why would you do this? For an empire that treated you like dirt? For a wife who could barely look at you? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was calm and steady. When I was 7 years old, my father took me to see the first human ship land on Mars. I remember standing there, looking up at that ship, and asking him why humans went to space. It was dangerous. People died. Why did we keep going? He turned to look at her, his gray eyes reflecting the red lights of the tactical display. He told me that humans do not do great things because they are safe. We do great things because they matter. And sometimes, when something matters enough, you have to be willing to give everything for it. But this is not your world. Not your people. You are my wife. Marcus smiled softly. That makes them my people too. I do not need you to love me. I do not need you to respect me. But I will not let you die. Not while I can still fight. Salutha felt something breaking inside her chest. All these months, she had looked at this man and seen only weakness. She had mocked him, ignored him, treated him like nothing. And he had spent every single day becoming stronger, learning, preparing. Not for himself, for her. I was wrong about you, she said. I was so wrong. You were protecting your people from an unknown threat. I understand that. He reached out and gently touched her face. His fingers were warm against her cool scales. Do not blame yourself. Just give me a chance to protect them now. She caught his hand and held it tight. There must be another way. We can find another solution. There is no time. Every minute we wait, they get closer to firing range. He pulled away softly. I need to go. The pod is being prepared. Wait. Salutha removed a chain from around her neck. On it hung a small crystal, glowing with inner light. This belonged to my mother. It has been passed down through my family for 3,000 years. Take it." Marcus looked at the crystal. "I cannot take this. It is too valuable. You are my husband. What is mine is yours." She pressed it into his hand. "Come back to me, Marcus Cole. That is an order from your queen." He smiled. "I will do my best." He turned and walked out of the war room. Every officer bowed as he passed. General Thesara, who had served 7 queens, who had never shown respect to any outsider, placed her 4 hands over her hearts in the highest Vailori salute. Marcus Cole walked toward his death with his head held high. And somewhere deep in her soul, Salutha began to understand what humans truly were. Not weak, not fragile, not insignificant. They were the species that ran toward fire while everyone else ran away. They were the species that looked at impossible odds and said, "Let me try." They were the species that would die for people who had never treated them with kindness, simply because it was the right thing to do. The Queen watched the drop pod launch from the palace hangar, a tiny spark of light flying toward the darkness, and for the first time in her 1,000-year life, she prayed. The drop pod hit the hull of the Eternal Judgment like a bullet hitting flesh. Metal screamed as it tore through the outer plating. Automatic systems sealed the breach in seconds. But by then, Marcus was already inside. He dropped into a maintenance shaft and immediately started moving. His body hurt with every step. His wounds had not healed. The medics had warned him that physical stress could kill him. He did not care. The Dominion flagship was massive, 3 miles long and a mile wide. It carried 10,000 crew members and enough weapons to destroy a planet. Marcus was one man with a stolen rifle and a knife. The numbers were insane, but numbers had never stopped humans before. He moved through the ship like a ghost. The maintenance tunnels were dark and cramped, designed for small service robots rather than people. Dominion soldiers were too large to patrol these areas. They assumed no threat could come from here. They were wrong. For the first 2 hours, Marcus encountered no resistance. He crawled through ventilation ducts, climbed through machinery spaces, and swam through waste processing tunnels that smelled worse than anything he had ever experienced. He did not stop. He did not rest. The crystal that Salutha had given him hung warm against his chest. He focused on that warmth, using it to push away the pain. When he reached the intersections of the ship, things became harder. The corridors were wider here, patrolled by armed guards. Marcus moved carefully, timing his movements to avoid detection. He killed when he had to, quick and silent. One guard looking the wrong way, another checking his communication device, a third stopping to adjust his armor. Each one fell before they could make a sound, but eventually, someone found a body. The alarms began to wail. Marcus started running. The ship came alive around him. Doors slammed shut. Emergency lights flashed red. Hundreds of soldiers poured into the corridors, searching for the intruder. He ran into a squad of 6 soldiers at a junction. They raised their weapons. He raised his faster. 4 of them fell before they could fire. The other 2 died in close combat, their bodies too slow against his smaller, quicker form. More soldiers came. He kept moving, fighting through them like a river flowing around rocks. He was bleeding from new wounds now. His vision was starting to blur. His body was screaming at him to stop. He did not stop. On the command deck of the Eternal Judgment, Lord Vethrak watched the internal sensors with growing horror. A single red dot moved through the ship, leaving a trail of dead bodies behind it. "One human," he said, his voice shaking. "One human is doing this." Admiral Korath, the traitor, stood beside him. His scales were gray with fear. He had seen what Marcus could do in the throne room. He had hoped to never see it again. "Send everyone," Vethrak ordered. "Every soldier we have. Stop him. My lord, the fleet needs crew for the attack. The attack means nothing if he reaches this bridge. Send everyone." 500 soldiers converged on Marcus Cole. He was 3 decks away from the command bridge. His ammunition was gone. His rifle was broken. He carried only his knife and his will. They surrounded him in a wide corridor. Weapons pointed at him from every direction. There was no escape. A Dominion captain stepped forward. "Surrender, human. You cannot win." Marcus looked at him. His face was covered in blood. Some his own, most not. His body was broken beyond repair. But his eyes were still clear, still burning. "Humans do not fight because we think we will win," he said. "We fight because some things are worth dying for." He attacked, The battle lasted 7 minutes. Later, the Dominion would study the security recordings, trying to understand what they saw. They would slow down the footage, analyze every movement, every technique. They would never be able to explain it. Marcus moved through 500 soldiers like wind through leaves. He used their own weapons against them, their own bodies as shields. He fought with a fury that seemed beyond human, beyond mortal. He was wounded 100 times and kept fighting. When it was over, he stood alone. Behind him lay the bodies of his enemies. In front of him was the door to the command bridge. He was bleeding so badly that he left red footprints on the metal floor. His left arm hung useless at his side. One eye was swollen shut, but he was still standing. He walked to the door and ripped it open with his remaining good hand. Vethrak and Korath stood at the far end of the bridge. Guards raised weapons, but Vethrak stopped them with a gesture. "Remarkable," the Dominion Lord said. "Truly remarkable. I have never seen anything like you." Marcus walked forward slowly. Each step seemed to take enormous effort. "You should have treated her with more respect," he said. "You should have left my wife alone." "Your wife?" Vethrak laughed. "She despises you. The whole galaxy knows it. Maybe. But she is still my wife. And I protect what is mine." Korath suddenly grabbed a weapon from a guard and fired. The plasma bolt hit Marcus in the chest. He staggered but did not fall. "Why will you not die?" Korath screamed. He fired again. And again. Marcus kept walking. Blood poured from his wounds. His body was failing, but his legs kept moving, one step at a time, carrying him toward his target. Korath raised his weapon again. Marcus threw his knife. The blade crossed the distance in a heartbeat. It buried itself in Korath's throat. The traitor fell without a sound. Vethrak backed away, real fear showing on his face for the first time. "Guards! Kill him! Kill him!" But Marcus was already moving. The guards fired. Some shots missed. Some hit. It did not matter anymore. He reached Vethrak and wrapped his hands around the Dominion Lord's neck. They fell together, crashing into the main control console. "This is for my wife," Marcus whispered. "For my people. For Earth." He squeezed. When Vethrak stopped moving, Marcus pulled himself to the communication panel. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely press the buttons. But he managed to send one final message. "Command bridge neutralized. Network is down. Hit them now." In the space above the Valori homeworld, the Dominion fleet suddenly fell into chaos. Ships crashed into each other. Attack formations collapsed. Orders contradicted each other as every captain tried to act independently. The Valori fleet struck like a spear through paper. In 20 minutes, the battle was over. 200 Dominion ships destroyed. The rest fled into deep space. On the command bridge of the Eternal Judgment, Marcus Cole lay on the floor, staring at the ceiling. The crystal his wife had given him was still warm against his chest. He smiled. "I did my best," he whispered. "I hope that was enough." 3 hours later, Valori rescue teams found him. He was still breathing. Barely. 3 weeks after that, he opened his eyes in a Valori medical bay. The first thing he saw was Salutha sitting beside his bed, holding his hand. She was crying. "Welcome back," she said through her tears. "Welcome home, my husband." And for the first time, Marcus Cole believed that he finally had one. 1 year later, a statue was raised in the palace gardens. It showed a human man standing alone, facing an army. The inscription read, "Marcus Cole. Human, husband, hero. He stood alone so others would not fall." The Valori Empire and Earth's united colonies became the closest allies in the galaxy. Their combined strength brought peace to 100 worlds. And whenever anyone asked why the mighty Valori showed such respect to the small, fragile humans, they would tell the story of Marcus Cole, the man who walked alone into an army, the man who proved that courage is not about size or strength or lifespan, the man who showed the galaxy what humans truly are, not weak, not insignificant, not fragile, unstoppable. And in the royal chambers of the palace, a queen held her husband close every night. Grateful that he had come back to her, she never treated him like a treaty obligation again.